Hi, I'm James McGuire, Editor-in-Chief of eWeek. We cover the enterprise B2B market. On today's webcast, we're talking about all things data governance. We'll discuss common challenges in data governance and how to overcome them. And we'll also highlight a data governance framework that can help your business move forward. At the end, we'll have a live question and answer period with our expert panelists, so please stick around for that. Our experts today are leaders in their field. With me is Dalen Winbush, Chief Information Officer at Quickbase. Dalen has more than 20 years of experience in IT, leading technology and process transformations to support major company growth in many different ways. Dalen, very good to have you on the panel today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Also with me is Dennis Lovey, Director of Services for Quandary Consulting Group. Dennis has decades of experience in defining and scaling service organizations and operational processes to meet accelerated demand for innovative technology. Good stuff. Hello to you, Dennis. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. I know the two of you have a presentation. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
So thank you for joining us today. Next slide, please. I'd like to first set the stage for what data governance is, why we should care about it, and how we can achieve some of its goals via Quickbase. Early in my career, data was considered a corporate asset and in some cases managed, but more often than not, it was a very primitive view and often aligned around access controls only. In the past decade, as data has been monetized, and even more recently as data has been used to fuel the explosive growth of AI, its value is more important than ever. So what then is data governance? At its simplest view, I like to think about data governance as the policies, procedures, and standards that guide how data is collected, stored, managed, and used. This is a very simple definition. Of course, reality is more complex than that. Each of these points has a number of detailed and intersecting considerations. For example, compliance rules, think HIPAA, for example, dictate things like where data comes from, where it goes, who gets to see it, and so forth. Data quality considerations affect how data is obtained, how it's used, who uses it, and why, and so forth. A number of data governance frameworks exist to help structure this type of work. The top-down frameworks can be quite heavy. Some examples are listed here on this slide. As with many frameworks, and true for data governance frameworks, often pieces and parts of these are adopted within an enterprise. And in fact, we're seeing that in the field more and more. And frameworks in general. Frameworks are a guiding principle, a guiding structure, but a pragmatic approach to using frameworks in general is what we see in reality. Sometimes we're more active participants in the lighter weight, more agile frameworks, and there are several agile and MVP-oriented types of data governance frameworks out there that take a lighter, more priority-driven and iterative approach to how governance functions. They operate within the same guiding principles, but are a little bit easier to digest and a little bit easier to support and certainly have less overhead. More often than not, in our work at Quandary, if data governance in this style is a consideration for the business units in which we're working, we're a participant and we must work within the guardrails that a framework imposes within that particular organization. So getting the basics right. For today, we're going to speak about some specific subject areas and hone in on how Quickbase can help to support these aspects of data governance. First is data quality. Everyone's nightmare scenario. You've retrieved some internal data in order to perform some analysis that drives your business. You've made plans based on this data. Perhaps you've made irreversible decisions based on those plans, only to find that the data was problematic. An interesting word, problematic. Another more contemporary example, the case of low quality or problematic data being used to train machine learning models. Bias in data is one reason, and a very big reason, why machine learning sometimes fails. And there's a number of interesting source material regarding this that you can find big problem in machine learning. Data quality has been a concern since the early days of information systems and clearly remains a concern today. For data privacy and security, generally compliance requirements and confidentiality concerns drive privacy and threats drive security considerations. Today, data is a clear competitive advantage for many organizations. Data integration is clearly a strength of Quickbase. In fact, the majority of Quandary's customers are pulling data from multiple sources in order to have a single view of it. Of course, this brings to light questions like, what is my system of record or my authoritative source for specific types of data or elements within those types of data? It also brings complexities like, when is it okay to write back updates to sources of truth in terms of read-only sources versus update-only sources? I personally refer to this as data curation, and it can be quite complex, as we've found. Certainly, though, ease of integration is astonishingly straightforward now. Finally, data architecture needs to be considered in implementation of a data governance framework. It is simply a fact that specialized uses of data, such as for data warehouses or data lakes or for machine learning, require specialized data architectures. For example, data warehouse design often breaks down an architecture into 4 layers: the source, staging, warehouse, and consumption layers. Performance considerations play a role here too. Performance requirements of a bond trading system would not be handled well by most traditional relational databases without very specific design and probably offloading high volume transactions into some kind of in-memory data storage. Blockchain structures might also play a part in some enterprises where immutability of data is of paramount importance. So some of the common challenges, and I'll pass this over to Dalen.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Thanks for breaking down some of the basics for us. So at Quickbase, we really try to keep this as simple between what we call the 3 Ps, and governance is much more than just product and capabilities and security features. So let's talk a little bit about, what's the heartbeat of an organization? It's the processes. Quickbase doesn't just manage them, but breathes life into those processes, making processes agile, responsive. For example, think of a process that is used to take weeks because the organization's bogged down with manual entries, cross-departmental emails, things done in spreadsheets, and then there's a bunch of waiting periods in between each one of those interactions. And again, with Quickbase, this process is transformed through automation, real-time updates, and seamless integrations. While policies are the guardrails that keep us on track and keep the organization on track, and Quickbase ensures that not only just from the active participants and in our daily workflows, but integrating policy checks within the platform, where Quickbase ensures that compliance is not an afterthought, which typically happens, and we get into some trouble, but a built-in part of the process that may look automatic compliance checks before projects get moved from stage to stage, or even real-time alerts when an action violates a policy for any reason. And then I think ultimately, I always say this with my team, tech is easy, people are hard, but ultimately it is about the people. Governance is not about imposing just control. It's about empowering people to make informed decisions. And where Quickbase really thrives on this is creating an environment where everyone has the information they need at their fingertips. For instance, Quickbase empowers team members to take ownership of their part of the project, knowing that they have the latest data, that the data is correct, understanding the relevant policies, what can they do to move forward with confidence with those policies in place. And I think at the end of the day, we take a 360 approach, and it's about creating and increasing processes that are dynamic and efficient, policies that are integrated and actionable, and environment where people again feel empowered, feel informed, and it's governance that really makes this all happen. And it from a real world perspective, this is where we thrive. And now let's talk a little bit about the problems that we solve. Go quickly through this. The data quality issues. This is where, if there's no clear governance model, we quickly get into data quality issues and inconsistencies in ways. There's security concerns. If you don't have a good, proper governance, this is where you have a risk for unauthorized users getting access to data that they may not, or supposed to not have access to. And then the lack of clarity around who has access to what data, which actually creates confusion and creates a lot of risk and data breaches. And then I think ultimately duplicative efforts, without the governance structure, projects are duplicate tasks are done in projects without really realizing that other people have done the same thing, and time is wasted, and resources are wasted as well. And I think just standardization. There's got to be some standardization across the environment to make sure that whatever data is entered and managed is consistent across the organization, and effectively creating better accuracy within the business operations. And I think lastly, difficult scaling. Without proper governance, it is really difficult to scale. And when you do scale without governance, this is where things get way out of control, and you do create an environment of the wild, wild west.
Yeah, thanks, Dalen. One of the things that we definitely see within our customer base is that data governance can be seen as quite burdensome. It really is important that the business value of taking on a data governance initiative really needs to be proven. The value of data governance, that is. I would postulate that in the more progressive organizations, the value of data is better understood, and the impact of low quality data is also better understood. But as with any initiative, the business value needs to be clear and explicit. Interestingly enough, the bottom-up approaches I mentioned earlier around MVP or agile-based approaches to data governance and adopting it mean that you can start slow, and you don't have to have a lot of expense in adopting a data governance program. You can do it at the business unit. You can do it at the within a team even, as long as you're prioritizing the right things of value and taking a risk-first approach. Related to the prior point earlier about data integration, siloed data obviously can fragment the institutional view of the truth. I mentioned this a couple of slides ago. Data governance requires people to implement within an enterprise, and often there are limited resources available to provide. So stewardship and curation of data requires people to own and be accountable for those sorts of things. And sometimes that's a problem because there just simply isn't the bandwidth to take that on. On the topic of data ownership between business IT, this becomes even more of a sticking point in the world of citizen development, where development using low-code, no-code tools like Quickbase allows business units to build and make operational decisions without IT's involvement at all. If not managed, or if the relationship between the business and IT is somehow dysfunctional, any question about data ownership will be magnified, obviously. Data context relates to the lack of trust in the data. Often this can be as simple as an issue in naming conventions where personal interpretation is required. What does total cost mean, or total amount, or the devil is in the details? And it's very easy to make wrong interpretations about what data you're looking at and thinking you're looking at the truth, and you really aren't. And finally, data control, certainly more related to ensuring that the right people have access to the right data that's appropriate to their roles, while managing security concerns. So this is certainly a very visceral experience for me. I need data to do my job. I need to be able to access the data and not have security get in my way. A data governance framework can assist in mapping access to roles and ensuring that this is done in an appropriate way.
Well, thanks, Dennis, for that. And I think we can all agree that if IT is not involved in the development of the governance, and it really does become really difficult.
Yeah.
So there are many pitfalls, right, that we've kind of already described in the previous slides. And I think one common pitfall that we see typically in the no-code, low-code space and possibly other technology deployments is really the mistake that most organizations will make is just diving headfirst into like just building applications without laying any groundwork for sustainability, sustainable governance, and adequate training. Imagine constructing a building by starting with the roof first. You can already imagine very, disaster is about to happen, and it's a recipe for instability. And definitely without the support of a strong governance foundation and elements, app building can become, again, we talk about wild west, or we talk about, shadow IT, leading to issues such as, Dennis just mentioned it before, data silos, inconsistent user experiences. And there's a significant potential for security risks. Now, instead, if we kind of just flip the script a little bit, by starting with foundational elements first, organizations need to set the stage for governance and training and have a natural evolution and supporting a healthy app development. And think of it like, again, back to more construction and constructing more of a pyramid. The broad base represents foundational elements that include standards, security, compliance. As we build upward, we incorporate, comprehensive training, ensuring every user is knowledgeable and capable within this framework. And finally, we go to the top, right? Now we're getting to, app development after everything's been constructed, which is built on a strong, stable base. And, this strategic approach ensures that new apps are developed, maintained. They're already in alignment with company policies and best practices. IT doesn't have to put the stop to everything. It also empowers users to not only create, but also manage and maintain application efficiency and driving innovation ultimately and getting business value. And I guess, a takeaway from this again is start with building the bedrock of your foundational elements first, before you get into a situation that those applications, that environment has now grown tentacles, and it's really hard to really pull that in from an IT perspective, and bring IT along the journey with you. I think if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about where do we stand from a citizen-led and operational perspective when we think about citizen development, and how does that look from an IT perspective. And I think there's multiple unique environments. I think the organizations have unique ways of structuring governance programs, especially when we think about the world of either shadow IT or, again, no code, low code, which is a topic today. And I'm sure many of you have felt somewhere in between the spectrum here. From the left, today, technology is closer to the business than it has ever been before. And this is where, on the far left, business-led is where business really takes the whole responsibility by leading and designing of their own applications and technology, building and deploying these apps in the environments where IT really is positioned just to provide guardrails on what the users and the organization can and cannot do, and instructs guidance, but not so much really driving it, right? And helping the from more of a supporting role, a consultative role. If we look at the other side, the bookend, from IT led, this is kind of where we all want to have control in our arms around the development of applications from a pro developer perspective on the IT side, where we're very much involved in the planning, developing, and deploying and maintenance of these applications. And this is where the main ownership really is sitting on the IT shoulders, where we stand up and reinforce governance programs and then we hand off to the business users at the end of the day and show them what they can and cannot do. So this is where IT typically sits and where we're really comfortable. Now, there's definitely a blend in the middle. I think a balance in what we're starting to see in the world of citizen development and empowering our business with IT as a stakeholder, an equal stakeholder, and working together to plan and build and deploy and maintain these applications through the life cycle is really critical. And I think no matter what model you have, having IT's partnership involvement is key in implementing the success from a governance program and no-code platforms. And if we go to the next slide, I'd love to just talk through some of the core aspects and kind of dive into what we kind of think about determining what governance comes from. And if you haven't seen the theme, I like the theme of threes. Every slide I have is pretty much a theme of threes here. And this is really about, again, building blocks, what's most important, the way that you start. And, the foundation is the policy guides. This is where we set the stage, aligning Quickbase with our IT policies and InfoSec standards, just like any other technology within the environment, to create a secure and compliant environment. Think of it as setting the rules of the game, defining how and when Quickbase should be used. Just like point systems, there are specific use cases, specific needs that Quickbase really fits into. And so this is where determining where Quickbase fits is critical. As we look at the middle layer here, this is the kind of our data lake governance by leveraging Quickbase's robust APIs. We're not just collecting data, but we're connecting data. This step is all about bringing coherence and context, turning disparate data into a narrative that informs our governance decisions. And the top of the track is where we step back and we kind of look at the bigger picture. Using Quickbase to manage Quickbase, which is a theme, is an approach where we define what needs oversight from a control mechanism perspective, logging, monitoring and reporting on the things that are most important in that environment. And this really ensures that everything's on track and nothing slips through the cracks, and you have more observability across your environment. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the tools, some of the capabilities within Quickbase that really brings some of these things to life. So these are just some of the tools and capabilities that are at your fingertips from a citizen perspective. And so if we begin at the top of the core governance piece, the admin console, which is part of the platform, this tool really serves as the command center, in enabling oversight and observability and control over the entire platform from an IT perspective, so that you feel like you do have command and control. And once we have this centralized oversight in place, this actually gives us more from a syncing perspective, building upon what we've gotten from the admin console, centralized control. We also have the power to synchronize all the different governance standards, consistency applied across all the environments. With our system in sync, it's essentially to really talk about transparency. I mentioned logging, monitoring, alerting before, and this is where audit logs really come into play, and having a transparent record of all changes at the micro level and access within Quickbase, ensuring accountability, reinforcing compliance with internal and external regulations if you're in a regulatory sort of a vertical. Now, to ensure the transparency leads to actual insights, we utilize the data scanner for maintaining data integrity, right? Which is a proactive tool that scans and identifies any discrepancies in our data, helping to maintain the integrity and reliability for decision-making and processes. And speaking of action, and we talked a little bit about our API and empowering us to extend governance beyond Quickbase. Our APIs empower seamless integration with other enterprise systems, whether that's Salesforce or ServiceNow or some of these other bigger point systems, SAP, which allow for more cohesive governance and approach that spans across the technology, your technology landscape. And in the spirit of that extension, let's shift our focus to foundation of trust in the platform, which is safeguards, by advanced encryption. And this is kind of the bedrock of Quickbase, is the security that we bring to the table that ensures that data is protected both at rest and in transit. And as we talk about its critical motion, importance of innovation done safely, which is enabled by our sandbox and the features inside of our sandbox. This really just, again, giving a place for people to have safe space for development, testing, enabling innovation without compromising anything within production, and the stability of the platform. This is really where security lives within the application as you go through the different cycles of that application. And in innovation paired with insights give us the power to make informed decisions. This is where the platform insights come into play. And I think this is a really, really significant part of our platform that delivers deep visibility into how Quickbase is used across the organization, driving data-driven decisions to optimize process and the governance. And informed decisions must be considered, consider compliance. And this is underpinned by effective data classification. We use data classification in all other applications and collaborative tools such as Outlook or O365. And this is all about data within Quickbase is categorized properly, aligning with your compliance requirements, enhancing your security posture. And finally, to wrap this up, let's look at how we simplify and secure access through identity access management platforms, integrating SSO, making sure that, the right people are authenticating properly through the tool. And by simplifying those things as well. So if I was to take two things away, these are a lot of tools packaged together within the platform. But I think when you're on your journey, I think the top two things to really consider on that journey is, number one, get observability within the admin console, so you have complete visibility across the platform and in the environment. And then second, make sure that your authentication is connected to your identity access management platform. You have enabled SSO so that you can make sure that everything's tied back into your authentication strategy across your environment.
Thank you, Dalen. That's great. So I want to share with you some real world examples. So these are anonymized customers of Quandary that we've worked with for, in some cases, years. And just to outline some of the aspects of data governance, all of these systems that were built, multiple applications for each of these customers, was built using Quickbase. Quite complicated systems. And they illustrate different facets and different points of data governance. So it's said that the world would be shocked if they knew how much of today's commerce is managed entirely by spreadsheets. The first example is no exception. This was for a large technology leader. Using Quickbase, we eliminated many custom and variable spreadsheets used to assess and qualify internal projects. This allowed for standardization and enhanced data quality on the information beyond what could be accomplished within a spreadsheet. The business impact here was significant to this customer. Hundreds of users, and the ROI was rather immense in this work. For another Quandary and Quickbase customer, a buying network, we built a client-centric data architecture around which multiple client data sources were consolidated. So think of a single view of clients that's composed from multiple data sources in real time as it happens. This allows, obviously, for the opportunity for one single view so that better decisions can be made, and so that you can get the full picture from a business perspective, and certainly there's an impact here in the data architecture as well in this type of consolidation. Within the financial services space, which is highly regulated, using Quickbase, we built an app to handle access control. And finally, within the healthcare space, also very regulated. Everybody seems to have an opinion or know about HIPAA. The Quandary team built a platform for handling patient claims and billing in a HIPAA compliant fashion. Quickbase allowed for multiple integration points, compiling data from multiple sources and connecting to various services with insurance companies and so on and so forth. So very much Quickbase as a technology and as a platform can take on and handle and mitigate a lot of data governance concerns and considerations. Very much so.
Great, a lot of good material. Let's open it up for a question and answer period. I know that we had one early on, and one of the audience members asks, perhaps you covered in one of the other P's, but how do you handle P-place? That is geography. I have to know if data I want to use is off limits to me because of EU, UK, or other restrictions, correct? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can handle that one really quick here, and thanks, John Butler, for your question there. We try to simplify frameworks, but place is certainly a topic of data privacy, and with Quickbase, this is definitely something that's built into the platform where we can handle things such as CCPA, GDPR, compliance with a variety of different measures. I think based off of our platform, we're able to detect, automate, and enforce some actions like retention or deletion or movement of that data and redaction of across different data stores as well. That's built into the platform. So this is an area that Quickbase definitely has the capabilities to deliver to our customers.
Mm-hmm. Good. Let's see if I see any questions at this point. Right, not at this moment. I do have one of my own. I was wondering if I was listening, Dennis and Dalen. What do you think is the most common challenge? You talked about a number of challenges for data governance. What do you think is the most common challenge, and how might you address it?
So I think it depends on the type of customer. So large customers, especially those that are very compliance aware or under regulatory scrutiny, that have data governance frameworks that have been adopted, it's hard for those customers to not get in their own way sometimes. And so it's difficult. It's all about execution of the framework itself. I think for smaller customers, the bigger challenge is almost like a lack of awareness sometimes. And we can certainly help with that, and we can support, as we've talked a lot today, we can support that through the Quickbase platform and the Quickbase technologies and features that Dalen reviewed a couple of slides ago. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a continuum there.
Dalen, your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So just to build off what Dennis just said, I'm going to take kind of a different approach here. One thing that I'm saying and that Quickbase is saying is, number one, I think the core of governance problems stem from a business-led kind of a implemented technology, right? And I talked a little bit about that spectrum of the difference between business-led and IT-led and what's a good balance. And the key ingredient there for success and to get beyond those pitfalls is ensuring that IT is part of the conversation, not after the fact, after applications have already been built, the data is already being connected to and in transit and at rest, is really making sure that IT and InfoSec are walking through this journey with you. IT and InfoSec have been kind of in practice, have been at this for over 50 plus years of defining their own governance and security and compliance policies within the overarching IT infrastructure. And it just really needs to be applied to more of a citizen-led environment, such as Quickbase and no-code, low-code, and ensuring that the business has the right guardrails, just like anything else, any other resources that they get access to. So again, IT has to be part of the conversation so that they can help implement a really strong governance and compliance policies around Quickbase and any no code.
Yeah, I would agree, Dalen. Governance is there for a reason, and that's not always understood well. And that's where communication is really key. And and the business value is apparent. So absolutely 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah. And then that's where we're seeing success too, Dennis, right? Is, the customers that we have that relationship with IT and they're walking that journey with them from day one. We're seeing significant success. And then on the other side, we see some challenges where IT is not part of the picture. So there's definitely a chasm in between there. And then how do we bridge that through that relationship?
Yep.
All right, good stuff. I don't see any other questions at this time. Dennis, Dalen, a good presentation. Thank you very much. Appreciate you sharing your expertise today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.